Okay, I'm going to get started. A couple of people will trickle in, but that's how these things work. My name is Don Bowman. My company is Agilicus, and we are all about zero trust for industrial manufacturing, critical infrastructure, making it really simple to get the right amount of remote access to the right person with the right amount of security at the right time with a bunch of legacy decisions that are sort of immutable. And today we're going to talk about that topic. We're going to talk about managed remote support and operations. What does remote mean? We're going to talk about some of the rationales for it. There's a skill set gap. Systems are getting more complex and it's requiring, more specialized skills to be able to support things. And as a consequence, you can't have one person that does everything that comes to the site. Commissioning becomes a cast of thousands rather than an individual with a screwdriver. We'll talk about one of the other big drivers, which is I call the SaaSification of systems, but things that used to be capital purchases that you would buy and run for their life are now somewhat interconnected with the internet, maybe through licensing, maybe through big data. We'll talk about big data and what that means in terms of its interaction with the cloud. We'll talk about the different perspectives of the different roles, the operator versus the partner. But before I do that, I thought I would just take this opportunity to talk a little bit about a case study we recently published and what that customer was looking to achieve, because I think it frames this fairly well. And this was a manufacturer, and they had locations in multiple jurisdictions. And each of their locations, each of their divisions was a separate corporation. So they had a parent holding company, and then corporation one, two, and three. And they were vertically integrated. So division one would make something that would be consumed by division two as part of the final product. And they also had a set of contract manufacturers that supported them. And their core business system was SAP. No real shock there. And that was something that ran at the parent company. And then all of the individual divisions and contract manufacturers would get their work orders from that and check material in and out of it for an inventory standpoint. And one of their challenges was they'd achieved this via interconnected set of VPNs, basically a full mesh. And they were kind of worried about this. They had the Clorox attack that occurred in the end of 2023, which was a very, very expensive, multi-week of downtime for a fairly large name organization. And they were kind of worried about that. There was also the new SEC rule, which required them not only to notify in their 8K form of a breach, but also required them to publish their cybersecurity governance. And this caused their board of directors to sort of, give some direction that, hey, is this something you can improve? And what we did for them was there was a couple of areas that we got excited about. And the first was that SAP. So people being able to use SAP without VPNing was something we achieved for them. So it was a seamless thing for the end user. They would click on the regular SAP icon. A browser would pop up and have them do single sign-on with their regular credentials, their normal, Office 365, Google Workplace credentials, and multi-factor. But then they would just use SAP normally. And the second thing it allowed them to do was to use they have these industrial label printers, these Zebra printers, and they wanted to be able to print to them, but they were sort of on this, the finished goods station didn't have access to the network that was on. So when SAP was open, we made it so they were able to do that. They wanted to bring multi-factor authentication, strong identity in all the way to that edge there, into the plant, which was a mostly air-gapped environment, and we were able to achieve that for them. And there was another use case which came out during it, which is in the parent company, the holding company, there was a set of executives that wanted a much more real-time dashboard type view that was only available at the division level. And they were able to achieve that where the executives could open Division 9 and see their production dashboard. And it was a very simple project in the sense that it only took a few weeks to roll it all out. There was no, go change everything, go upgrade everything, etc. And at the end of it, they had dramatically improved their security, resilience. They simplified how people operated. Their consultants that supported SAP which didn't work for them were able to use it without VPNing in, etc. It was a great project, and that's what we're really talking about today. Is whether you view remote as two locations of my own, or one of my users is remote, or the vendor that supports me is not on my site, or there's two companies that work together in a joint venture model, and whether you define it as support, something's broken, let's fix it, monitoring, let's make sure things don't get broken, or operations, hey, let me do that for you. All of these things are increasingly relying on the interconnectedness of all things. So these systems are getting more complex, and whether you're, all the way down at the bottom of the Purdue model and talking about sensors and PLCs, or you're coming all the way to the top and you're talking about business support systems like ERP, every one of them is getting more complicated. Every one of them has more and more security flaws. Every one of them, some nefarious hacker is finding a way to crack into and cause you to maybe worry about ransomware. And the recommended solution to this, of all best practices, and certainly the one I recommend, zero trust is a big part of a defense in depth strategy. So you need defense in depth, you've got multiple layers, but zero trust is really what I'm talking about today. And that's a very simple principle. It sounds very complicated. There's a lot of literature on it, but there's only three things you need to have zero trust. The first is the who problem. Who is this user or actor that's trying to use my system? You need to strongly be able to identify and authenticate them, multi-factor and all that. The second is what are they allowed to do? So make sure that, I might have permission A and you might have permission B and somebody else might have no permission on a certain system. You want to be able to not be all on or all off. The VPN is an all on or all off type solution. And the last is how. How do I get you there? So if you have the who, what, and how solved on a per person, per resource basis, you have zero trust. And that's really what you're trying to achieve. That way there's something called the blast radius when something bad happens. And I use the word when something bad happens, not if. Somebody's going to leave their laptop on the bus unlocked and open. I guarantee it. Somebody's going to have a shared password here, there, and everywhere. I guarantee it. Your blast radius is what they're allowed to do, what they were currently signed into, and you have an audit trail to prove it. And that's where your defense in depth is going to kick in, your additional microsegmentation. So that's really what we're talking about today, is how to make it simple to do who, what, and how in a manufacturing environment that has a bunch of things that are a little bit older, and maybe you can't just move to SaaS and wave a magic wand and have them managed for you. And increasingly, those things require internet access themselves. They have licensed servers off net. They have, an off-net SCADA historian, etc. And the other big driver is efficiency. Everybody's talking about, predictive analytics and big data and this and that and the other thing. And what does that mean? It means that your things need to be interconnected in real time rather than sort of store and forward in spreadsheets at the end of the month. The SaaSification. John Deere. Who thought that John Deere would go to war with the farmers? Make it impossible for you to repair a tractor. You can't buy it unless it's connected for them. I never thought this would happen. And they're turning something that is very, very far from SaaS into a subscription business. So you've got harvester as a service, plowing as a service. But that's really what they've done. And the side effect is, you've got 4G, 5G cellular everywhere. You're seeing this in all industries. Vendors are half done a product and they ship it to you and they finish it while you have it. Tesla. You see people that are shipping a product to you and improving it over time. You see people that are looking to get ongoing business revenue out of something because they're getting squeezed on the upfront side on the CapEx, so they want to get it back on the OpEx. Big data, here, when we think about remote access, we often think about a human that's outside and a thing that's inside. But it can be the other thing where there's a thing inside and a thing outside that need to talk. And you don't really want to have an outbound allow everything firewall, because then when ransomware comes in with the USB key that somebody dropped in the parking lot, it can activate. It exfiltrates all your data and encrypts what you've got, and you're left staring at it. And I don't know if you guys read, but AT&T just paid a bunch of money to somebody to delete this, and they believed them that they deleted it. This is the part I find hard to believe. AT&T, here's a check, and just pinky swear that you've deleted all copies of my data. They stole from you in the first place. Big data is complicated, and zero trust is an appropriate solution in this direction as well, to make sure that only that one thing is going to somewhere external, so that you don't have just somebody able to surf the internet inside there or click on a phishing link and open it. But it's certainly the way of the future. And whether it's from your building management system, your cameras, your security systems, your smart door locks, building access controls, whether it's from the process itself, whether it's from ERP, it's all going to continue to go there, and you're going to need a way to identify that workload is allowed to go here under this circumstance, and a way to get it across the firewall safely. You're not going to want to do this with port forwards. It's nearly impossible. The cloud vendors that you talk to, they can't give you a fixed IP. So I can give you a fixed IP. My traffic only goes to my site because I've architected it that way, but you can't get that from just in general with Amazon. Hey, the vendor uses AWS. There's no way to say what's the IP range I'm going to allow in my firewall for AWS. It just can't be done. There's a set of roles of the people that are involved in this, the cast and crew of this problem set. And I like to, put different hats on when I'm thinking about them. So the I operate role, it's my infrastructure, the risk is mine. If something goes wrong, it's my ass hanging in the breeze. I manage, hey, I run that thing for you, and it's your risk. If something goes wrong, shame about your problem. They have an asymmetric understanding of security. The I operate people needed to be very secure. The I manage people needed to be very simple for them to use. This doesn't have to collide, but it sometimes does. And where it collides is around, hey, let's just create a shared account for this. The company I Manage Co, let's make an account called I Manage Co, and you just put a password in your system and I'll give it to my team. And well, we can't do multi-factor because how would I share it amongst my team members? Well, will you please use SMS so I can use this SMS reflector for it? You start to get this bit of a gap there. They don't want to install your VPN because they got 10 VPNs on the laptop already with their 10 other customers, and they collide with each other. And then you have a set of other roles that are involved in putting a manufacturing plant together. Somebody that designs it, the integrator, the people that build it, the construction firm, companies that support it. They may do managed alarms for you. They may do predictive maintenance. They may do chemicals on demand or something like that. And then there's ultimately the manufacturer of the OEM of the equipment that you're buying. Allen Bradley and Rockwell and Siemens and all that stuff. And they have needs, you have needs to have them interacting with your stuff. The manufacturer, you may have a bug and you're debugging it together. They're not going to send a person to your site in time for you to get the meantime to repair. It's not going to be economical for you or them. The support person, they want to be able to get on to help you support something when it's broken. The person who built it, they have to do commissioning, and there's a bunch of debugging there. They got a bunch of skill sets. The person that does the HMI is different than the person that does the PLC, and they got to work together. They can't all be on site together. The person who designs it, they have a little bit less of a concern about remote access. But sometimes they need to get access to certain information there. They each have a different perspective on the problem associated with supporting something that's remote, operating something that's remote, and whether that, what security means in that environment. The person who operates it, Harry S. Truman, the buck stops here. They own that risk in the sense that when something goes wrong. I used to tell this to my team a lot. I said, there's a concept called involved and committed. We think about breakfast, bacon and eggs. The chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. The operator is committed to this, right? If something blows up, there's no way they can skate away from it because they're the one that is losing the cash. The manager is involved. Hey, my team has a set of security best practices we follow and yada, yada, yada. But when the rubber hits the road, it's the operator who's left holding the bag. So they have a slightly different perspective. The management company, if it's external, is really focused on lowering their cost of operations and how their team operates and simplicity. The operating company is really focused on, mean compliance, mean time to repair, and security. You can end up with them having a gap here. And the gap comes around a couple of key battlefields. Identity is the first one. Who is that user? Is the user a company? I never recommend it. I strongly recommend against this. Every action that is taken on anything you own needs to be by an individual person, a human being with a name and a face. That's what they need. They need a birth certificate because you need to have a throat to choke when it went wrong. And you can't have a throat to choke that's just a generic faceless entity. I don't know, IBM made a mistake. Well, IBM is a million people. So it's very important that identity flow all the way down to the action and it be tied to a person. And that way, when that person leaves that company, their identity is removed and you move on. Connectivity is the next one. So, we recommend against using a VPN for connectivity. The VPN is it's like a long Ethernet cable. You get a layer 3 address on a remote network and you can do anything you want. And once you start it, it just stays running all the time. It's the opposite of fine-grained audit. It's the opposite of fine-grained authorization. You really don't know other than they were in the network sometime between a month ago and today, and something bad happened. I don't know if it was them or not. And policy is multi-factor required when, and these become battlegrounds rather than common grounds. These two entities have slightly different opinions on it, and they end up negotiating this through contract and through actions. That identity battleground, we have a very simple solution to this. Every person in your team, every person in every team you work with, they have an account in the company they work for. I guarantee it, right? You could call it Azure, you could call it Active Directory, you can call it Google Workspace, you can call it Okta. They have an account because they're able to send emails. And they have their own systems, they have their own wiki and timesheets and all that other junk. And you need a way to be able to trust that identity, not create a new identity. The worst thing to do is to create shadow accounts. Oh, it's person at MSP Co. I'll make a person underscore contractor at my company co. The problem there is your HR and their HR, they're not interlinked. When that person leaves that company, you've got this account floating in the breeze and it doesn't work. So you need to be able to have this single sign on all the way up to everybody you work with. And that's what we do. We make it very, very easy. There's literally no integration required here to work with Okta, Google, Microsoft, and the user just sees it as a regular sign. It's like signing in for my email. I sign into this system. Single sign on, click, boom. There's no passwords. There's no additional password. There's a multi-factor. You can either use the multi-factor provided by Microsoft and Google, or you can use one provided by our system. It works all the way down deep into the plant, even when there's no internet down there, which is kind of important for you. People work for companies to test their identity via authentication. It's kind of common to force a new identity on that person, and that's where you get that shared password. I don't think there's a reason to do that. Let's get rid of that. That single sign-on in our system becomes that shared ID. Everybody's happier. It's more convenient. It's more secure. You don't have to worry about password reset flows on your team because your partner's team handles it. If you let this problem kind of slide, you get into sort of shadow IT and TeamViewer type problems where tools leak in there that have alternate ways of internet access and alternate ways of authentication, and they have shared. And one of the common problems or commonly talked about problems that occurred here was a water treatment plant in Florida a couple of years ago called Oldsmar. They had a TeamViewer system that was there so that a bunch of people didn't have to drive out into the woods late at night and get eaten by alligators and stuff. But they had a shared password on it, and they all shared it, and somebody had leaked it, and somebody else logged in and did some damage. And that's really a challenge here. TeamViewer's in the news recently. They had a somewhat of a breach the other day on July 4th. They think it was kept entirely in their corporate network. Hopefully it was, but it's a commonly used tool for remote support. It's kind of like a VPN. You've got a remote desktop that has access to everything. Once you're in it, you can do anything. The downside to that is I don't know what you did. So what's my blast radius? It's everything. And I got a shared address and I can't take users out of it and I don't know who's using it, etc. You don't really want tools like that. You want zero trust. So we talked about what is zero trust. You're hearing NIST talk about it. You're hearing states, federal, this, that, the other thing. It's the best practice. It is only one of the set of best practices. It's not like you can pick this and not do anything else for security. Defense in depth, you still need a firewall, you still need multi-factor, you still need an audit trail, you'll still need an antivirus. I'm sorry, it doesn't reduce the number of boxes you need by one, but it is a very simple concept. Strongly identify who, very fine-grained identify what they're allowed to do, make it very easy to get them to that thing, that how, so there's no VPN involved. They can use their device of their choice. User can pull over to the side of the road in their truck, pull a tablet out of a bag with a 5G modem, click, they're on your HMI, I see the problem, let me help you out with that, boom, 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 done. Manufacturer, same thing, let me have access, you see it on your phone, person A at manufacturer B is requesting access to robot arm C. Oh yeah, that's the one I put the safety pin in this morning, so if they touch it, it won't kill somebody. Yes, okay, we're going to debug this together. Okay, they're upgrading the firmware. Great. That's what you want. That's what zero trust is about, is that very simple connectivity attested by identity. And this is the solution. That case study I talked about earlier, that company that was using SAP at all levels, they had the parent holding company, they had a set of divisions which were separate corporations, each with their own identity system. They had a set of contract manufacturers that also interacted with their SAP. They had a set of IT support staff, basically a consulting company that supported SAP for them, that needed access. And it worked at all levels. So at the very bottom, at the finished goods workstation, somebody was able to open SAP and say, okay, print the shipping label for this. And that was able to go up through us and then back down into the corporate network where that printer lived, because the shipping station otherwise didn't have connectivity to the IT network. It's for the vendors. The vendors are able to get their diagnostic logs when you allow them. The integrator needs to upgrade line 5 in building 2, and you want to make sure it's that one so it doesn't, do something unexpected for you. But it really was driven by SAP. Everybody can run SAP from where they are, either via browser or the FAT client, and the only thing they have is SAP, nothing else. As a side note, one of the things that's facilitated for them was disaster recovery. What they've been kind of worried about is they've got this corporate data center up in the parent holding company with SAP, and what if that building gets hit by a tornado or something? Well, we've got a disaster recovery. We can move our SAP over to somewhere else being the cloud, but then all the IPs change, and we're gonna have to go and reconfigure every workstation and everything. And you could gut it out and do that, but with our system, there's no change there because they see it as a single host name, and they can just move that host name over, and everybody was happy. So they got multi-factor and identity all the way to the bottom, all the way to the factory floor, and those divisions or contract manufacturers attested by Office 365, attested by Azure, attested. In some cases, it was still on-premise Active Directory because that's what they had, but it made it very simple for those people. But also there were other systems that started to come to light. I mentioned the building management systems and HVAC. They needed outbound license management. That had been sort of squeaked in the system, and now there's a way to do that here. So this case study worked really well. Drew has pasted the link to it. Love for you to read it and give me some comments on it if you want. At the end of it, this is the equation. It's secure for me, I operate, and simpler for everybody. This is a non-zero sum thing. Poker's zero sum. I win, you lose. There's no way the chips are divided amongst us. But some things are non-zero sum. I win and you win. Think about building a house, the electrician, the plumber, etc. They each get paid to do that, but the house is worth more than the sum of their work. So here, those little videos that you're seeing there are the sign-in experience. And you see that sort of, I call it the NASCAR logos, but you see, they're picking, what's my identity provider, and I sign in via Google, I sign in via Microsoft. You can make that the individual company. I sign in via company A or B, but it's generic. You can say I have a Microsoft type account, and then users see the exact same HTML. This is really good for phishing protection. If your users are used to signing in only one screen with one logo and one URL bar and nothing else, it's harder to phish them with an email saying, hey, you get a free gift card. If you teach your users, look, you're going to have a bunch of accounts on a bunch of systems, and they all look kind of different, it's really easy for somebody to phish them because it's just another one. They can't really tell the difference. That sort of gray picture you see there, that's the outside of our office in 1900 when they were putting the train in. I love that picture. But that's our sign-in for Azure. But the real key here is it's simpler for everybody. Single sign-on for the users. There's no new usernames, no new passwords. It's typically cached in their browser. Click, they're signed in. They can use their device with their fingerprint, their face, all their favorite biometric, whatever it is. There's no user provisioning and deprovisioning. The user is all the way in the up top company that they work for, and when they get fired for stealing, they're gone, poof. And you don't have to worry about all the deprovisioning, all the down the chain happening as quick as possible. You don't care. There's a request acknowledge flow, so you could have the flow where somebody says, may I please have access? The administrator's phone chirps, this person would like access this thing. You can say yes. And the other key is there's no client software, no VPN. It's browser only, so it works on any device, which means, coming back to that iManage demographic, they don't like your VPN. The reason they don't like your VPN is they have 10 other clients with 10 other VPNs, and they can't install 11 VPNs on their laptop because they don't work with each other. They can't have 3 different versions of Cisco AnyConnect at the same time. So what are they going to do? Well, they make a VM out of it is what they do, and they leave it always logged in, and they remote desktop to it. I'm giving you the dirty little secret. I know this because at my last company, that's how we supported our customers. Look, I got a big team of support, and they got to get access in a hurry, and they can't be bothered with hassles like login and stuff like that. So we'll just keep this open jump box open all the time with no passwords on our side, VPN straight into your infrastructure. Now probably won't sleep tonight, not my problem. Maybe it's my problem. I don't know. And you can do multi-factor all the way down even into the air gap. And the multi-factor can be very simple. Like, you can either use code-based ones, which are okay, but they're a little bit technical for some folks. Or you can use what's called passkeys, where your phone gives a push and it chirps, but it doesn't have to be on the same network. The really nice thing about passkeys, I'll let you in a secret, it's dramatically more secure than any other multi-factor mechanism. There's a thing called multi-factor fatigue, which is, it happens a lot. You always say yes. So you get trained to click yes. So your phone chirps, was that you trying to log in, and your muscles are like, yep, even though you didn't do it. Like, your brain doesn't even engage. So what happens is, for people that use SMS-based ones, they just fire it at you all the time. Here, with passkeys, it needs the phone to be nearby, and it uses Bluetooth Low Energy for that. There's no other hookup there. There's no data flow over that. But what ends up happening is the user tries to sign in on the system inside the air gap. That goes through our secure zero trust mechanism up, causes a challenge to occur. The phone chirps, and then there's a way to know that the phone was physically adjacent to it. And the user doesn't see anything. They literally just see their phone chirp and they look at it with their face or their finger or their whatever, and it opens and they're like, hey, that was easy. And everybody wins. It's simpler for all and it's more secure for you, the operator. So, as we wrap up here, I like to think about this shared custody, shared destiny. There's a set of things everybody has an interest in being successful. It's not like your vendors are out to get you or, the people that support you, that I manage demographic. They're not evil people. They want you to be secure. They want you to have 100% uptime. They want you to pay your bills. This shared custody, I think that if you bring it around that concept of identity, that authentication, then you can end up with this model where, you as the operator, the customer can work with multiple partners separated by that trust but verified, to quote Reagan gap there. And you own what they're allowed to do, but you let your partners own who the people on their team are. And that's a pretty strong relationship. And I think that's just a good idea, personally. And then that can allow you to give access to things that you would otherwise never consider, like upgrading the firmware on a PLC. A few years ago, people would have said you're crazy to be talking about doing that remote. Suddenly, COVID happened, and they were forced to do it, and they're like, hey, the world didn't end. Maybe the world will end tomorrow, but it didn't end then. So, just to finalize up here, those challenges as an operator, you own that risk. Security is important to you. Your staff need remote access sometimes. Sometimes they just are away on vacation and you want to bug them and, they're forced to. You have rules, both internal, industry, your board of directors, your management, wherever they came from. You've made choices. You've bought certain equipment and you own the audit. You don't have a lot of control. The vendor usually dictates things. They dictate this is how the equipment works. This is what its capability set is, etc. So you kind of have to accept those decisions. The more complex things get, you're forced to just switch to trust. I don't know what's in that rack of stuff. There's like 90 different vendors in there. The other day there was a really big issue with Palo Alto, and Palo Alto VPN was compromised, and it was the SSL inspecting one, which is particularly nasty because you've embedded the SSL root key from it in all of your machines so they can inspect on the way out. Suddenly you realize your entire world's. A bunch of people are like, phew, thank God that didn't happen to me because I don't run Palo Alto. But they run this specific embedded device from Siemens, which has Palo Alto embedded in it. And they didn't know. And that information only came out a couple of weeks later. And then they were like, oh my God, I have a thing which inside it have things, which inside it have things. It's called supply chain. And the supply chain here is proving to be very risky because, there's a big tree. Some of the software that we build has the better part of 1 million interdependencies linked up into it. There's a lot of packages that go up there, and some of them are very small. And any one of those things, you're as strong as the weakest of those. It becomes a big thing. Remote support is expensive on an hourly basis. It's really expensive if it has to be local. So you want to be able to maximize how you get this stuff done. Meantime to repair. That manager challenge, they don't like the differences. They can't make their team work with them. They can't make your multi-factor work because all their customers are different. That causes them to give you bad advice. Don't worry. It's never been a problem. We trust each other. Of course I trust you. I don't think you're going to break into my network maliciously, but I have a duty to my company to make sure that there's some controls in place. So let's talk about that. Yeah, I might invite you over to my house when I'm not around, but I can't do that at the company. They see driving as an inefficient use of time. They just want convenience and cost for their business. So with that, I will open it up for any questions. Drew's going to paste another white paper in there, which talks a little bit about remote updates and specifics around updating, complex embedded systems like a PLC or an HMI. But it doesn't have to be those. It can be sort of IT systems that have done a lateral shift and now gone into business doing OT. A lot of the water treatment plants that I visited have Microsoft SQL Server 2008 kicking around with a sticker on the front called SCADA Historian. It's still the same IT stuff. They have an HP printer sitting there or whatever. Those things need care, feeding, and love in the same way that it does in the IT network. The difference is in the IT network, you see patching as a good thing. In the OT network, you see outages as a bad thing, and therefore patches causing outages is a bad thing. And therefore they get older and things get bad. And ransomware sneaks in, and next thing you know, you're the one in the news and you're filling in your SEC 8K form with a bunch of lawyers around and looking pretty nervous. So seeing no questions, I would love to engage with you. So my team will reach out after this, and I would love if you would, just engage with them and say, what were you looking to get out of this? My email is don@agilicus.com. If you think I got something fundamentally wrong, let me know. You jerk, you mischaracterize this. You're an idiot, whatever. But I would love to do some business together, and I think we got a great solution that we can help some of you out. So with that, I will sign off. Thank you very much for taking half an hour out of your day. I really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for upcoming topics, let me know. Cheers and bye bye.